Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us with another day of Ramadan. Inshallah, for Ramadan will be starting Madrasah soon, inshallah. So, create this presentation just to show you what curriculum we'll be teaching, inshallah, who the teachers are, what's involved in everything, and inshallah, so we'll let them have the first.
Well, that's fine, Chad. I think it's pretty straightforward. A lot of you have asked questions over the last few days, and rightly so. The only thing is we don't want to start until we felt we were properly ready. And I think with the masjid being done now, the way it is, I think we're ready to go after Ramadan. Then Ramadan came in between. I think we were stuck. So Maz, as he said, he prepared this for you. Obviously, it's the age group we're looking at, the age group we're targeting is 5 to 14. That's not to say we'll be excluding any older kids. Depending on the situation, there might be some kids that are very close to finishing. The reason why we said 5 to 14 is if you've got your kid in another madrasa at the age of 15, they're close to finishing, they're settled, I wouldn't recommend taking them out. Okay, that's just the nature, and that's not, I mean, I could speak from a completely selfish perspective and say we want to get our numbers up, but that's not the situation here. It's about the best for your child. And if your child is settled elsewhere and they're doing well, they're thriving, and I think you need to consider what's best for your child at that moment in time.
So yeah, as we said, inshallah, so we're predominantly focusing on, because before we started masjid, brothers were traveling far and wide for the masjid, for example, the Jumana, the Wukuliya, obviously Iqran, Masjid Ayesha started at the same time, so there wasn't a masjid around this locality to cater for the needs of the Muslims here, especially the educational aspect. So inshallah, we will take application from all the aspects of Bradford, but we will focus on Shipley, Wrose area, inshallah. So our vision and mission, inshallah, the mission is to work together in an accommodating, safe learning environment that encourages high standards a compassion of learning that includes spiritual development and best standards of conduct found in Islamic morals. So in a nutshell, basically, we want to give them all-around Islamic education for their spirituality, for their development in every aspect.
I think a lot of you, when you went to Madrasah, like myself when we were young, if you learned your Quran and you learned to recite fluently, not with tajweed, but just recite fluently, I think that was quite an achievement. And then if you picked up namaz, etc., and other things, it was a bit of a bonus. But I think we obviously now need to provide a curriculum that's going to make our students well-rounded, so that when they leave Madrasah, they can affect changes in the wider community as well. That doesn't always mean by speech. That's just with their own practice. So what they develop into is going to be extremely important. It's a big part of our mission, inshallah. So
every education institution, for the matter every company in the world, they have a certain set of values that they adhere to, and they want their employees, or for this matter the students, to adhere to. So our values are teach, implement, lead, and empower. So the first value, teach. I quote from Hadith, Prophet said, the nearest meaning, the best amongst you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. We aim to deliver lessons in a fun and interactive way to engage students mentally, spiritually, inshallah. The second value is implement. So in the Hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Messenger says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at a person's appearance or his wealth, look at person's what's in the heart and their amal. So we want to encourage students to implement this, what they have learned into their life, and that's a really important aspect of it. The third value, the leader also came from Hadith, the leader of the people is guardian, is responsible subject. Yeah. So we as teachers, inshallah, we're in essence spiritual fathers. So we will be responsible for your children's education. So not just accountable to yourself, but accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the best way to do that is lead by example. So if I'm teaching something with Maulana Musaib or I was teaching something and they're not implementing that in their life and they're not leading by example, then it's not going to attract any students, they're just going to be demotivated, and it's not the correct way of the deen. Our final value I would mention is empowerment. So we want to empower students to help others, and the best Quranic verse is help one another in acts of piety and righteousness. So if we teach something here, to a student here, we want them to go to school. We want them to go to, after school clubs or homework clubs and empower other students, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, through their actions, inshallah.
It's interesting because the big Jamaat brothers are here today, alhamdulillah. The whole process, if you think about it, you come out on Jamaat, the first thing you do is you learn your deen. Okay? The whole idea of being in that environment for 3 days is then you practice it, and as part of your practice, you then go out and propagate it as well. And that's what Maulana just explained to you very briefly over there. That what we want our students to do is not just, they'll come and learn their deen, inshallah, they'll hopefully live their deen, and then hopefully they can propagate it and pass it on to the masses as well. So it looks like for us, and for you as well, your children are your investment. Okay, a lot of you, if I ask you what are your children to, you'll say they're my life and whatever else. I can appreciate what you're going to come out with. The reality is they're your investment in your akhirah. The Prophet ﷺ has said that when a man dies, okay, all his actions come to an end, apart from 3. One of those 3 actions, okay, that is mentioned is that knowledge that somebody else benefits with. Then it's sadaqah jariyah, which you come across regularly, the continuous charity, and the third thing that's mentioned, the one that I want to get to, so I've mentioned them in a different order, is a pious child. If you've invested in your child, subhanAllah, you could be in your grave in a few years' time, I could be in my grave in a few years' time. But any amal that our children are doing, and anybody that they're bringing towards deen, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's so compassionate, He's so kind, okay, we will still continue to get the reward for that. So these children, I know we look at them and we think, what, they're my life, and I have all this love and compassion for them. Right, so alhamdulillah, Allah has put that in our hearts. But at the same time, we need to have a mindset that we need to invest in them so that we invest in our akhirah. Okay, and that's the reality of life. Ultimately, what we're going to be left with is our actions. And if we don't invest in these children now, we might end up destroying their akhirah and our own as well. So may Allah protect us from that, and give us the tawfiq to invest in our akhirah.
So yeah, just touching on the values again. So it's an acronym, TILE. So teach, implement, lead, and empower. So the way you look at it is that if you see an empty room, so say this is a fresh child who's come to the madrasah, for them not even adults, and they're learning about the deen. So each segment of deen is like a tile. And once all the tiles are complete, the room is complete. So that means your deen is complete, and then it's time to sort of implement that.
Okay, the tarbiyah side obviously is very big to us. We've got the academic education that the kids get from Madrasah generally. The problem is, if you look at a child's life, it revolves around 3 places mainly. He's got his home, he's got his school, and then he's got his Madrasah. So home, school, and Madrasah. Now, in those 3 places, there are only so many places that we can try and cover the child. For example, when they come to Madrasah, the responsibilities of the Madrasah to an extent, fair enough. But if the family driving the child in and listening to music on the way to Madrasah, it becomes counterproductive. You understand? So at the same time, we need your support. Why? Because ta'aleem can be gained from Madrasah. The tarbiyah, it has to begin at home. It has to start at home, and we need to make sure that we're able to nurture these children the way we need to. Okay, so you've got to make sure that you're doing this. So for example, if me and Maulana are teaching them that you've got to eat with your right hand, they're probably not going to eat that many times in Madrasah. So if they're coming home and they're eating with their left hand, the practical side of it, you need to help us implement it. Because like I said to you, 3 places mainly. There'll be some that go to football clubs, etc. and so on, and they go out in the wider community. SubhanAllah, that's amazing. But the 3 places that nearly every single child will be going to that comes to Madrasah is school, home, and Madrasah. And those 3 places, we need to make sure that their actions are in place. It's interesting because the reason why I mentioned school to you as well, that I was telling Maulana this the other day. We worked with an organisation at Musaib called Parental. And it's something we're looking at the moment as well for Masjid Ayesha. But they're a very powerful organisation. They've got a really good curriculum as well, but it's only based around the tarbiyah of the child. It doesn't really cover anything else. It doesn't apply or fit any of that at all. So what we've got in front of you here, and what we're going to go through in a minute, is completely different to what Parental will do. It's knowledge to action. That's all it is. So putting your learning into action. Now, one of the leads from there, Wrose, Brother Wrose had gone to London. It was some kind of big organisation, and the educational systems were looking at, or educational organisations rather, were looking at a way to help nurture children and help build, help their character strengths. Now, in that meeting, there was only one Muslim organisation that was present. The rest you had people from the Christian background, from the Jewish background, from schools, etc. So what happens is at the end, the keynote speaker is a Jewish person. Waqar stands up at the end to go speak to this keynote speaker. And as he approaches him, he asks him some questions at the end, and there's a lady waiting behind him to speak to the keynote speaker. Now, when Waqar finishes talking to that keynote speaker, that lady says to, instead of going to the keynote speaker, she turns to Waqar and she says to him, you know, all these things, patience, humility, you know, controlling your anger, etc., being kind, what have these got to do with Islam? So he explains to him, this is a key part of Islam. It's a key part of Islam. And you know, something the Prophet ﷺ encouraged, we practice it as Muslims. So she, you know what she said to him? She said, how come I've been working in a school, predominantly Muslim, for the last 17 years in Walsall, and I can't see that in any of the kids. And this is the reality of life. Do you understand? So her experience of the young Muslim youth, it wasn't what we try and, you know, what we try and promote. It's something completely different. So we need to make sure that these characteristics, we're able to instill them into our children, so that when they go out in the wider community, they're practicing it, and they become a means, inshallah, for the guidance of other people as well.
Just right from what I was saying, the most important aspect of this tarbiyah is tarbiyah of ourselves. My friend's father used to tell me, or take my son to Salah. I can't remember the last time he went to Salah himself. So it's in the Quran, isn't it? Allah will not change a group of people until they change themselves. You know? So that's why, my brothers, if you think that you need to pursue some form of education, some ta'aleem yourselves, you know, approaches, inshallah, you know, to rectify yourself, and you know, in essence, you can, you know, part that to your kids, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, the curriculum that we chose is called Al-Nasiha Publications, and now these guys are worldwide. Alhamdulillah, I think they're based in Leicester. They're based in Leicester, and many Madaris from Maulana, but most of them Madaris in Bradford, they teach Al-Nasiha Publications. So the key features of Al-Nasiha Publications, you have all in one coursework. Previous syllabus, they had, like, you know, one for Qari, one book for fiqh, one book for kids, they can lose them, you know, and then, you know, replacement marathon and that, and it gets baffling. So all in one coursework, covering 7 important subjects, accompanied by corresponding workbooks and differentiated activities. Inshallah, we'll give you a chance to have a look at the course later on, inshallah. An engaging child-friendly approach and age-relevant content. So these, the syllabus has been devised and created by pioneers in the education system and so forth, and scholars, endorsed by many scholars, such as Mufti Ismail Mek, Sheikh Muhammad Salim Dora, Mufti Islam, and many other scholars.
I think before I get to this, just very quickly, one was mentioned, you get a separate course book for each student study, and then there's a separate workbook for the activities. So they're 2 different things. Now, obviously, one was mentioned, it's got fiqh, akhlaq, seerah, tarikh, aqaid, hadith, and adab. And interestingly, one of my former students is sat in the gathering as well, Ibrahim. Now, when he was younger, we used the tasheer books in Abu Hurairah. The thing was, we had a separate book for each topic area, which was good in a way, alhamdulillah. They were very thin. But you've got it all here. The problem was, we were looking for spaces to be able to fit tarikh in, the history. Because we did akhlaq, we did aqaid, and we did hadith, and we did fiqh, we did those 4 things. But we couldn't find a spot for seerah, which is very important. Okay, seerah, the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, and also the tarikh, the history of the Prophet. All of these things are very important. You get the odd story in these books, but there wasn't it wasn't structured. In these books, alhamdulillah, when you go from year 1 all the way through, it follows a very structured approach. Okay? Now, alhamdulillah, deen, you know, the brothers that are able to read them out, they'll tell you better about this than I can, okay? If you look at your deen, you can think of it as a complete circle. And that circle, you half it. So you've got semicircle on one side, and you've got semicircle on the other side. So one semicircle on this side, it revolves around the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which are literally your aqaid and your ibadat. So you know, anything to do with aqidah, the belief of a Muslim, and anything to do with worship, that comes under the rights of Allah. Then the rights of people have 3 sides to it. Okay? You've got mu'amalat, mu'ashirat, and you've got akhlaq as well. All these 3 things, they come under the other side, the rights of people. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these things are covered very well, and they're separated, are covered in separate topic areas within these kitab, alhamdulillah.
So yeah, this is just basically reiterating what Maulana said and the way the MCA publications have been produced and designed. But inshallah, once you have looked through them, then you get that understanding.
Inshallah.
So basically, just to touch on their success, there are 18 countries, 45 publications, 1,029 institutions, and over 100,000 students all around the world. And you can have a look at the website, all the information is there. Now, they've created another aspect of the curriculum called Masjid World. So it's a digital learning platform, which is accompanied by what they get taught in madrasas and the curriculum in madrasa. It's very fun and engaging. You've got crosswords, puzzles, you've got word searches and everything. So it's a really good idea, because when they leave from here, say, for example, you want to help them with the beginner, okay, they say, okay, instead of playing roadblocks or whatever these kids play these days, let's have a puzzle of the seed of the prophet or paper or something like that, But inshallah, we'll explain more about once we start the madrasa. Inshallah, we'll have another session to explain how you can deliver that with people.
I think that's from me, inshallah. Just one other thing as well before I forget, that when you get to certain year groups with Nasiha, the book's split into the boys' version and the girls' version. You can understand when girls get to an age of 10, 11, 12, their needs are a bit different, likewise boys as well. So they've catered for that as well, alhamdulillah. Okay, and those really important topics, which are probably not delivered the way we need them to be delivered, as a Muslim community within the schools, they're alhamdulillah delivered within these kitabs as well. I'll explain this very quickly, because this is I've taken this directly from Abu Hurairah, where I'm teaching at the moment. Abu Hurairah said, we have 2 sessions there. Because we've got a large number of students, we tend to break it down over 2 sessions. And the first session begins at 4:10, and we're done for about 5:45. It's not very long. And the idea behind that is that a lot of the students that we're getting now, they often tend to come from school pretty tired, and it becomes a very long day. And especially if your kid is 5, 6 years old, they need playtime. Even in Hadith, you're told to encourage your child to start reading Namaz from the age of 7. So the idea of having very young kids come to madrasa, there needs to be a level of play and games involved. Okay, and that's why it's really important that if you're not doing it at home, it's something you start doing at home too. But the way it works is, because we've got so many topics to cover, we have to have a fortnightly timetable, which means we can't teach the same things every single day. So for example, I can't cover tajweed every single day because I won't get time for fiqh. I can't do fiqh every single day because I won't get time for akhlaq and so forth. So the way the routine works is, when the kids come in at 4:10, it might take a couple of minutes getting the kids in, getting registered on, and then after that, you're instantly into mushq. And mushq is a drilling routine. So for example, for those of you that might move from Pakistan, in the schools in earlier days, early in the morning, they make you read the kalimat very loud. Okay, and a lot of the elders that studied there, they remember all of that very well, because it was literally drilled into them. And what the students will do when they come in, whatever their target is in terms of their surah, the kalimat and the dua, for that week, they'll do it in mushq. And in terms of mushq, it has a lot of benefit, because it's very direct. The teacher's reading it first, so she's making sure that the pronunciation of each letter is perfect, and then the students are going to repeat it, and they'll do this 10 times. They'll do with the surah first. But if, for example, if you've got surah al-Nas, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, then for that surah, they might start off with 1 ayah initially to start with, okay, and then they'll move it on from there. Then after mushq, on one day, for example, we have tajweed, and for tajweed, the rules come into play, but when they start off in year 1 or in reception or in the very first few years, the rules are very, very basic. And what we rely more on is colour coding. What I mean by that is not picking up a colour-coded Quran, because I'm completely against that. Okay? The reality is, what they'll need to do is they'll probably need to get Sharpies, the permanent markers. And the guideline that they get, it's almost like a laminated version of the guideline. Now, when they do their letters at the beginning, the throat letters, they'll put a certain colour dot on in the top right-hand corner, the top left-hand corner, bottom left, or bottom right. Then they'll do a very similar thing for the full mouth letters. And after they do this for a few pages, naturally kids become very clever, because normally they're going back to the first page to look at, oh, is this a throat letter? But after a bit, it automatically gets into their head. And when they carry on doing this throughout the qaida, they automatically pick those letters up, and they can remember, oh, red letter is a full mouth letter. Okay? And that's so you're not over, you're not over informing them, or you're not providing a huge amount of information where they're taking it away and just trying to drill it all into them. Okay, that can be done with certain aspects, but not all the time with rules, because they won't remember the application of the rules. But if you're doing it in a creative way, where they can remember it by the colour, or but they can remember it by a sign when they're reciting it, okay, all of these things, it helps support their reading each other. Likewise, the mashq will carry on both weeks for the first 20 minutes or so. After that, it alternates then from 4:30 to 4:55. Okay, at that point, that's where the topics change. They'll be doing fiqh some days a hadith, some days a guide. The work they will get to do at home will be very, very little. Why? Because I know from schools, you get plenty of homework for the kids to do. So it can't be something too heavy. Some days, once they've got their subject done, if we can, we'll try and incorporate it and include that homework time within Madrasah. But where we can't do it, inshallah, you need to support us. Along with that, we haven't put this in at the moment, but there might be a slot that we might vacate once a week for Parental, which is the other curriculum that we're talking about. Because at the moment, it's not a discussion we've had, and it's not an organisation we've contacted yet, because they're very selective with who they give it to. So we had it at Abu Hurairah, but we're not using it anymore, because the numbers that we've got are very, very high, and it's quite hard to manage them. But I'll tell you more about Parental towards the end, because there's a bit more detail to that. But in terms of what your child will be learning in Madrasah, is when they come here, there's a whole aspect of stuff they'll cover, but it's going to be done in a way where it's broken down for them, and it's not done. Some of the things are not done every single day, but some of the things that are really, really important that they need to know, they'll be repeated again and again to help with various aspects of their learning, inshallah.
So yeah, what you as parents and guardians expect from us, the Madrasah, the teachers. So committed, happy and effective teaching staff is very important. You would want your teachers to be happy teaching, otherwise it's the cost of your children's education. Safe Madrasah environment, so the teachers are EBS checked, obviously with CCTV and everything everywhere, which is very important. Intellectual and emotional growth fostered by the Madrasah, so it's an all-encompassing environment. And when we say that we need to work with the parents in tandem, we mean that yes, the tarbiyah is also starts at home, but continues in Madrasah. So we work. So you give 50%, we give 50%. But when we say we give 50%, of course you might have comments and everything. We will give our 100%, but I hope you understand what I mean. So we need to work together. A strong home Madrasah communication. A fun and supportive Madrasah environment. The last thing we want our kids switching off. We don't want that. We might have had it in our time when we were younger, when we went to Madrasah and everything. But we as teachers need to find ways to keep them motivated and engaged. To do everything we do, we need to keep you informed. Whether it's through WhatsApp, whether it's through letter, email, or everything. You need to know by the end of the week what your child has learned. And by inshallah, progress meetings and everything, we will have that on a regular basis to So for example, you might have a question. Okay, other kids of similar age or other Madrasah have learned this dua. How come your kid doesn't? My kid doesn't learn the dua. So come approach us and we'll see where the kid is in everything, inshallah.
Just a couple of things as well. The safe Madrasah environment, we need you to work with us on that. I'll give you an example. If Shazad here, he's not happy about something that his child's learning in Madrasah, Shazad. If we've got a class going on here and Shazad walks straight through, and obviously as a parent you can become quite upset at times, quite close to an emotional thing. If you come straight through, you're putting other kids at danger. And the way I wouldn't allow another parent to come in front of your kid, I'm not going to allow you to come in front of the rest of the kids as well. So if you need to check something, please make an appointment. We'll be here at some point and we'll speak to you. We're not going to hide away from anybody, we're in the masjid anyway. But the fact is that we can't have anybody coming in front of the kids because it causes a safeguarding concern for us. So in class time, it will be a no-go area. But after Madrasah, if you need to speak to somebody, please make an appointment. And at that point, you can speak to anybody you want. It's just like I say to you, especially in terms of safeguarding, we need to be even more careful in Madrasah. You understand? Why? Because we're often under the spotlight. Why? Because there might be some malpractice elsewhere, and that unfortunately there's a stigma around some Madrasahs, and it goes far and wide. And they try and encompass every Madrasah in the same bracket, And that's, of all this, I don't agree with it, but that's the reality of the situation. So we need to be very careful, so we can't have any parents coming in front of the children. If you've got an issue with a teacher, by all means, you know, if, for example, the teachers that teach you, if it's one of them that you've got a concern about, you can speak to Moni Shadi, you can speak to myself, okay? So you can speak to somebody else and try and get a word across at that point. The other thing is, you know, the fun and supportive Madrasah environment, we have got ideas that we've taken, unfortunately, and Makas will kill me because I've taken one of the ideas, but we've got a concept of a MashaAllah box, for example. So when a child does something good, you know, his name goes on a sheet and it's put inside that box. And at the end of the term, the children with the most MashaAllah points, they tend to get a prize or they get rewarded. Okay, that's inshallah, that's what we're going to try and do. The fact of the matter is that obviously we need support with that as well, because sometimes kids can become a bit upset if they don't get, you know, if they don't get an award. So we just need to keep encouraging them to inshallah try a bit harder.
So as parents, what we want from you, so be involved in your child's education, goes back to be another thing. If there's something you don't understand, say for example, okay, how do I get this? How do I implement this hadith in the child's life? Come approach us. We'll give you inshallah the guidance, whatever, you know, that needs to sort of for it work. Provide resources at home for learning. If they need a clear desk, if they need a special, you know, place in the room, you know, giving them, you know, putting them on the couch in front of the TV might not be a good idea, you know, to do their sabak and everything, to learn the lesson. So give them a nice little area for them to, you know, work on. Second, a good example, this goes back to my friend's you know, situation, that if you're, you know, ask them, what do you learn about the Madrasah today? Or Ustadi taught us how to eat with the right hand. Ustadi taught us, you know, to say salam, to smile is sunnah. And then the way we should do that is, okay, let's practice that in our lives. When we go to work, our colleagues, our family, friends, let's do that. And automatically your child will see that and see, you know, God's doing that, and will do that. SubhanAllah. Encourage your child to do the best at Madrasah. You know, when we were kids, you know, our father, our parents, you know, they used to sort of persuade us and everything, and people have come from different walks of life and everything, and encouragement is very important, you know. And there's no like, if a child is struggling with his Madrasah, if this child is struggling, come see us, you know, and then we'll discuss ways that we can give him extra support, prepare extra support, inshallah. Support Madrasah rules and goals, which is self-explanatory. Open communication with teachers regarding your child's development. Don't leave it too late, my brothers. If you think that, okay, my child's not learning, then 6 weeks later you come to start, oh, how come it's not? That's too late. You know, because that's 6 weeks. At the first sign of, if there's an issue, so say for example, I don't know, you've heard another Madrasah teaching the same kibabs, and the child, you know, they're in the same place, but he's learning du'as, he's learning kalimas, how come, you know, my son's not my daughter's not learning the same thing? Come approach us. You know, we'll see where the issue is, and inshallah we'll rectify that.
There's one rule in particular that I'll mention. I think somebody might not be happy. Okay, but the reality is that we get kids coming in sometimes into madrasas with clean shaven heads from the sides whilst they've got hair on top. It comes under the ruling of qadha and we won't allow it. And we'll be very clear about that. Okay, why? Because if they don't learn it here, where are they going to learn it if they're not teaching it at home? So they need to learn it somewhere. If they've got a blade too and they've got hair on top, it's not a problem in the slightest bit. Some contrast will come under makruh. But if it's clean shaven on the side and they've got hair on top, it comes under haram. So we're not going to allow it. I'm going to be very clear about that. Okay, so if a child comes to madrasa, they've got clean shaven on the side, it might start with a warning, it might be, you know, it might be a sanction, and then it might be an exclusion. That's the reality. Because we've got to take it very, very seriously. We can't allow, look, by all means, I know some people feel sorry for their children or they want them to get certain hairstyles, do it in holidays. Please don't do it in madrasa in term time. In term time, you've got to make sure, because at the end of the day, what it does is, unfortunately, it creates an environment where it might encourage other students towards haram as well. And we don't want that going on another child or another parent's account. So please, if you're going to do it outside term time, so by the time they come in, at least the slide is drawn out. Okay, that way at least, you know, we're showing some ability. I'll be honest with you, when we started on Musaib about 20-some years ago, we didn't used to allow uneven hair. We was that strict on it. But over time, we've realised it's very difficult to manage. And it's caused us a lot of issues in the sense that a lot of parents have complained about it, a lot of parents have, we've had to give sanctions when we probably didn't really want to. So we've tried to meet people halfway, that the reality is, we can get away with makruh, and listen, even that makruh is questionable, but the fact is that there needs to be some hair on the side here if you're going to have long hair on top. And if that's shaven, at that point, there will be a conversation with the parent. Okay. Okay, in terms of character development, I told you about Brother Waqas's syllabus called Imti'amal. And it's amazing because our idea is to give students an experience. I mean, I worked with an executive head teacher of WCAP, which is, you know, it was at Wakefield City Academies Trust years ago. They've gone bust now, but they were like one of the lead trusts a few years ago. And he was an executive head, and I worked with him for a few years. And he used to have a concept, and it's used in various schools, but he used to say, catch the children being good. Okay, so try and find someone to praise. You understand? And what we tend to do, unfortunately, if I tell a child that you've got to be kind, have I given him an opportunity to show kindness? If I tell him you've got to be merciful, have I given him an opportunity to show that? If I tell him you've got to be considerate, have I given him an opportunity to show consideration? The idea of the Imti'amal curriculum is to kind of keep that all, you know, to make sure that students get those opportunities. It's based on experiential learning, okay, which means students experience what they're learning. So, for example, in Abu Dhabi in the past, we've had, you know, food buses where children have gone out, they've had food delivered, or they've chipped in for food, and they've taken it out to refugee homes, and they delivered it there. There's a whole process to it. When they come back, there's a conversation around, you know, what did you learn? How did you feel? You know, how did you find it? We've done the Salvation Army in the past on Leeds Road. Okay. Likewise, you can do different things. Some of the kids in Madrasah, they planted seeds for plants to grow. Okay, within Madrasah, various things, all to do with the environment and, you know, affecting change around us and having a positive impact on people around us. I know some schools, some Madrasahs from Preston and Blackburn, they've done their projects around hospitals where they've gone into the children's wards with presents for children that have got long-term illnesses. Okay, so it's small things, but it's doing stuff with the community and putting their learning into practice. Okay, inshallah, that's something we want to do, and it might involve the odd weekend here and there. So it might be attending on a Saturday, trying to, you know, get kids together and make sure that they get involved in something slightly different. There might be a litter pick, but we've done that in the past as well. And I know around here, there seems to be a growing concern about mess now. There seems to be a lot of litter lately. And that's something that we might be able to help towards. But these are things, obviously, they'll get praise from us for doing it, and ultimately they're rewarded with Allah, we know that. But to encourage them, inshallah, they'll be praised from us. Hopefully they'll get praise from the wider community as well. And it'll keep them, it'll hopefully make them grow as individuals. Oh, and the other side of this is, look, you know, the Prophet said, nothing is heavier on the believer's scale on the day of judgment than good character. We know from another hadith, the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that I was only sent to perfect good character. Okay? So that's how big it is Islamically. The Prophet's akhlaq subhanAllah, they're all out of this world. Okay, so we need to try and make sure that we give our children opportunities to be able to practice those things. Because again, if they're going to school, they're coming to Madrasah, and then they're going home, they might not always have an opportunity to showcase their character in the wider community. If we can provide those opportunities to them, inshallah, it will be very beneficial for them.
Just sort of one more I was saying, I always go back to the leader example. If you want to develop the character, we need to develop the character in ourselves. You know, for example, I don't know, a child was drawing something and dropped all the colourings on the floor. You start shouting at them, go ahead and pick it up. Go ahead and pick it up. Because they know they made a mistake. They made a mistake. They're expecting daddy or mom to shout at them. But you're not going to do that. You're going to go help them pick it up. And they'll be like, you know, it's like reverse psychology. They'll be like, dad didn't shout, dad didn't. So next time I'm not going to do this, next time I'm going to khidmat my mom and dad. You know? So it's really important. Just a little incident happened a few years ago. So we had a Eid feast at work. I arranged the whole thing, alhamdulillah, with a few of the brothers. And so the objective was to feed everyone at work 80 people, but we're not taking any money from the non-Muslims, because we want to show what it is to give sadaqah, what it is to be selfless than selfish. But towards the end they started to come and say, look, we want to contribute and everything. So we opened up the fund and we gave that to the welfare trust for people, brothers and sisters around the world who are struggling with iftar. And what brought back, subhanallah, was that the following year there was one non-Muslim lady. She kept the 40 fast from Ramadan. I'm not just talking about water fasts. No. Full fast. And she used to open it, she used to text her friend and say, when is iftar today, when is sahri today, you know, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us guidance. And the whole atmosphere of work should change towards the Muslims. At that time, it was this whole pride event thing happening and whatnot. So there was a bit of backlash from the, from the Muslims and friction. But that actually basically got them together and everything, and they start looking to Islam more. And I can see that from my perspective, the atmosphere changed. So it's really important for us as parents, adults, and guardians that we need to perfect our character. And I sometimes, more often now, if you stuck anywhere in life, just think for one split second, what would Prophet ﷺ do? What would he do? What would Prophet ﷺ do if you got stuck anywhere? Would he condemn that child if they're messing about or not learning or anything? How did he conduct himself? But to understand his life, we need to look at the seerah. So it all goes from the beginning, inshallah.
It's just one other thing I like to point out as well. It's interesting, but when I started teaching the Abu Hurairah, there was some du'as, parents were learning them as well as the kid went on. There were even some du'as by Allah I didn't know. I might have passed whilst I was studying, but you don't learn every single dua because you go over 1,000. So there was some du'as in the sheet that we were using for the kids to teach them. Like for example, when drinking milk, that I'd never picked up in my life. You understand? And you end up learning some of these du'as from the Abasi children are learning them. So that will give us the free to understand and take on information. We've got two teachers, obviously you're aware of one, Abdullah, there's Abdullah on the other side as well, who's here today, Alhamdulillah. And they'll shall start the teaching. We might need, if the Madrasah grows, if the numbers increase, then we'll have to employ the teachers. But at the moment, we're starting off with two. For the boys' side and for the girls' side, but it might mean if the group that come in first, they're very young, they might be just alternating, they might have to work it out differently. It just depends on the age group they get, inshallah. Shall I go with this? Okay, this one is going to hit some of you, and unfortunately it's the reality of the situation. The term fees is 175 per term. That is quite expensive compared to other madrasas, and I'm not going to beat around the bush about it, okay? But I've spoken to different madrasas, and I've got a view from a lot of different people as well. And the fact is, I think what's happening at the moment, especially with the energy bills, etc., those prices have to go up. There's no way around it, okay? The other thing is to be able to provide the training to the teachers that I think is necessary. And I'll be very clear with you, that money, I'm not going to have anything to do with it because I'm not going to be teaching. My teaching, by the grace of Allah, is in Abu Hurairah, and inshallah I'm going to stick there for life. But the idea is that because I'm overlooking this, that figures come from me. So it hasn't come from Abdullah, it's not come from Abba as well. But from my perspective, it's really important that the fees is higher so that we can do the things that the teachers need so that they can deliver to the students and fulfill their needs. And that can only happen if we're covering those costs. I know there'll be a lot of people that will compare it to Iqra, there'll be people that will compare it to Abu Hurairah where I'm teaching at the moment. And I'm going to be honest with you, our prices there are lower. But that figure, like I say to you, given that we've got a debt on the madrasa, given that the electricity, the gas, etc., the bills have gone up significantly. Okay? I think some madrasas might be increasing there soon anyway. But I'll be honest with you, there are madrasas that I know in Bradford that when they were told about the energy bills rise last year, they were considering only opening 3 days a week because they couldn't afford it. There were madrasas in Bradford that were talking about a system where they'll only open in summer because they don't need to turn the heating on and stay closed in winter. And this is the reality of the situation. So that funding, by Allah, you know what, it's not something that's going to go to my pocket, but it's going to be for those staff that work here. Okay, obviously, my work, like I said to you, it's in Abu Hurairah. Okay, that's what I understand. A lot of my khidmat, predominantly your teaching, is going to be there, inshallah. I'll help out here when I need to, but from the teaching, that's going to be the fees per term, per child. And that's the real work, inshallah. We'll finish with the hadith. Is that the last one? Seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. Muslim, and every single Muslim has an obligation to learn enough knowledge or seek enough knowledge so that they can live their life according to Islamic teachings. Okay, and that's something we need to understand. I'll stop there. One of you got anything to add?
Just one more thing is, like I said, I keep going back to the same thing. We want to go all-around approach. So inshallah, sometime, and I want to do it sooner than later, we want classes for adults, sisters, brothers. Because what we teach to the kids, to the children, part of that with the adults as well, so you can help us, keep it, stay in the loop and everything. But that's a different, inshallah, subject. Inshallah, we will come with later on.
Another thing that I'm going to add to this as well is, look, if Maulana and some of the teachers will get paid slightly higher than other madrasas, okay, inshallah. But if that's happening here, it's happening because we can then keep them accountable, hold them accountable. If we're paying them peanuts, I can't expect somebody to go outside and do extra work for the madrasa for the kids. So I know a lot of you will be stung by the fees figures, but please don't. The reality is that if you want, if you want the madrasa to run, and if you want them to do extra for your kids, we need to support them and we need to support the madrasa as a whole. Okay, and like I say to you, as somebody that might be looking to the madrasa side of supporting it, we can only hold people accountable if they're being covered for their time in madrasa. What they do with that money, and I can assure you there'll be some that might put it back in the Jannah box over here. But whatever they do with that money, it's their right. Okay, but the fact of the matter is that to hold them accountable is the whole reason why the teachers in your local schools are on strike. Okay, and believe me, they're on 25, 30 quid an hour. So what they do, and listen, I know our goal is akhirah, but we've got, for the people that come in for their time, we've got to cover that time for them. Okay, we need to support it. Otherwise, what will happen is we get teachers rushing to teach in madrasa, doing things last minute, okay, not really focusing on the children. And that's not something I want. I don't want our children, our teachers to be going outside and looking for these things. They need to focus here. They need to make sure that because a lot of things will be managed via data. If I'm looking at a kid's suburb and he's only progressed the page in the last 2 months, obviously when it needs to be logged. Now the only time that staff can log it and they'll forward it is probably at home. So if I'm not covering that time for the staff, I can't really expect him to do all of that. Okay, there's a lot of things that have happened in the background that you won't be familiar with. But because a lot, in terms of progress, we rely heavily on data. Okay, and that's the reality, which is why Maulana said to you that if you see your child hasn't covered much suburb, come and ask questions. Okay, that's a fact of the matter. But to be able to do that, to be able to hold the teachers accountable, they need to be looked after. Because what I don't want is a teacher 2 years down the line saying to me that actually, I need to look for another job because I've got 2 kids, I've got 1 kid, and I need to look after them. Okay, I don't want that to happen at all. What I want them to do is to commit long term to the madrasa, to come in, to buy into the madrasa's vision and work with these children, and not just work within madrasa hours, work outside madrasa as well. So when you leave, they're still on your mind. Okay, you're still trying to benefit them, inshallah. Now, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we've got the incentive of the akhirah, no doubt. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we support our teachers so that they can deliver the best possible outcomes for our children, inshallah. Okay?
Very clear, thank you.
If you've got any questions at any point, please contact us. There are application forms on this side. If anybody needs to take an application form, please take it. Okay? Look, inshallah, we will work with the children. Inshallah, but may Allah make it so that you see the benefit. We want, when I say to you, we want a rounded approach. We want the kids to be in the masjid as much as possible, especially on weekends. We want the kids to come happily. I don't think you should need to force them a fortnight to get them to madrasa. Do you understand? There should be a bit of a carrot so that they end up coming towards the masjid. There might be something going on here. Okay, there might be something that interests them. And we need to keep that in mind. We need to be willing to get them together, to take them outside. I mean, it's interesting. A brother spoke to me yesterday. SubhanAllah, what person remembers from his young days? He spoke to me and he went to the Madrasah. I was blown away. One of the hosts passed away. I didn't know him personally, but I think my brother might remember him. But one of his brother, he taught in Masjid Bilal years ago. And I think he passed away in about early 2003, give and take, when I was just graduating from Madrasah. Now, some brother that came here yesterday, he'd been to Maktab when one of the hosts was teaching there. And he'd teach them Monday to Friday. They'd get taught and they'd be in Quran and whatever every single day, and then Friday they'd have some time off the timetable where they do other things. They'd cover fiqh on namaz, etc. And Saturday he'd call them in for 2 hours off his own back, by the way. They do janazah namaz for an hour or just namaz in general. They practice that, and then at the end of it they go for a game of football. Okay, for an hour. Now it's amazing that 1 hour of football, it created a bond for the 11 hours of teaching. When he was telling me yesterday, and the kind of love he was talking about as a start with, it honestly blew me away. And obviously, like I said to you, I've got no experience in Maulana. I've never met him. I don't know, I don't really know him at all. I know only Shipley, alhamdulillah. I don't know Maulana at all. So when he was telling me this, I was really, really impressed, alhamdulillah. But the fact is, we need to find ways to connect with these children, We need to keep them on side. I think those days are gone when you said to a kid, get up, and they just got up straight away. Okay, I think the times now, there will be a level of strictness because we've got to keep some boundaries. But at the same time, a child will be given every single opportunity to correct his, anything that he's done wrong, because we need to give him a way back into class, and we need to give him a way back in to connect with the class and with those stars again, and that needs to be there. What we don't want to do is close children off, and now we'll have they turn in a different direction. And I've seen it in secondary school enough times. There are plenty of kids that I know personally who've turned away from the. Okay, we're not give them guidance again. There is dare I say this, there's a kid in my school, predominantly Muslim school, by the 95% plus Muslim kids, who's come out as homosexual about a few weeks ago. So these things are challenges that we need to fight, and you're not going to be able to fight them by being overly harsh. You're not going to be able to fight them by alienating kids. We need to make sure that we're keeping these children on side, and we need to make sure that we can cater for their needs. Okay? I'll stop there. Sorry, I'll pass you kitabs around just so you can have a look. Okay. You probably graduated. Can I borrow you for a second? You come up. You go to the 67 and just hand these over. Okay. Also, this application. I don't think they're a bit too easy, are you? You've got a workbook and the course book to go with it, children.
I just want to mention, brother and sister, one important thing just from what Maulana said was that we don't want to use this madrasa as a tick box exercise. No. A lot of madrasas might do that, or we don't do that. We want quality education to cater for all the Muslims or the children. Yeah. Now, all the madrasas might charge 20 quid, 25 quid a month or something. Yeah. So you need to understand, okay, let's go to them and say, what kind of syllabus have they got? How are they teaching? What's the quality of the teachers? And compare that to what you can get from here. And the extra £20, I mean, all you have to do is give the Uber Eats for a month, once a month, inshallah, and that will, inshallah, cover it.
That'll be helpful.
But yeah, it's really important, just like Maulana was saying, I'll give you my niece, she's basically Cambridge resident candidate. She's one of 3 Muslim children in a school of, I think, 600. She comes to me with these questions every day, Shiaism, this and that. And I'm so happy, wallah, she's a very open person, meaning she's, communicates openly. Imagine if she was one of them, I'll Google online what Islam says, and that. You've got all sorts of online, But now, so these those challenges in school, so they can come to the Madrasah, and inshallah we'll be able to give them defend their deen, inshallah, from the Islamic perspective. So, yeah.